Cheers, my friends. Let's get into evocations, shall we? So, when calling on an energy or a force of energy, and we're going to make it an embodiment of something, and we're going to call it into a circle or into our lives, or we're going to bring it on purpose into our environment. In the Grimoire of Arts, I go through several different types of evocation of forces, from elemental forces to the elemental powers, which are different. Forces in this case are the natural free energies of, like, the heat from fire or the flow of water, right? Or like the way that air moves. Powers are the intelligences behind the thing. It's the stuff that you would read in Franz Barton's work, or it would be the stuff like the seals in the Goetia, right? Those are forces. Those are powers. Those are the intelligences. And if you're going to go into like the classical application of angelic evocation, then the powers are one of the various hierarchies of angels that exist. I'm not going to get into that one today, but that is one of the ways that evocation methods work. Planetary forces are going to be the behaviors of those planets, whereas the planetary spirits, again, they're the powers. They're the intelligences that move behind. So those are going to get you into like the Arzal Model or the Legemiton or the Goetia, or whatever you want to call them, where you've got the repositories of the different jinn, the different spirits, the different entities themselves, and you're creating an environment in which they can sustain themselves that's not going to be corrosive or corruptive to their nature, their behavior, when they're in the ritual space or when they're in that communicative interaction where you're going to bring them to this planet to do something for you. And now there's the forces within the place that you're in. It's going to be the energy of your location. So think about this as like tapping into the genus Loki, not the intelligence of the land, but it is the energy of the land. It is the terroir if you're going to make wine. It's the behavior of how the sun hits the side of the mountain, or how it then relates to the growing things. It's all of those things involved in bringing out an experience or an expression within a specific place. So if you're in a place of high trauma, the evocation of the place would be to call the trauma out of the place so you could work with it, so you could purify it, so you could do something to it on purpose. Whereas the evocation of the spirits of the place would be when you're performing an exorcism and you're conjuring it up out of the woodwork, up out of the dirt, up out of the land, up, and bringing it into that point of origin, so that what you have to do next is actually going to do something viable for you. So that way you can put it into work, or you can purify it, or you can incorporate it into alchemical transmutation stuffs, so that way its nature then becomes part of the nature of the spell that you're crafting or the totem that you're working on. So then you have the evocations of the bestiaries, the behaviors of the animals from their bones or from representation magic, so that way when you conjure up a butterfly, you're going through the process of transmutation of you were learning. You're in a cocoon, you're isolated, then you're going to become something different. You know, they say that a butterfly can't see its wings, but it's just fabulous as it is, right? Like, it knows it can do things. So you have to become like the thing that you're going to be embodying when you do the evocations of the bestiary. So with those, it's not that you're seeking to become intentionally like an animal. It's like you're, in this case, inverting your consciousness so there is no separation between you and that animal state. So when you're evoking it, you're calling it outside of yourself, right? So you're saying, I am bringing into my life that which is this thing that is not me. and I am using it to do what I need it to do for me and for my purpose. And so, like when you're going to do the evocations of deities, right? You're going to bring them down into your space. You're going to call them up, or wherever, or however you want to you phrase it, but they're coming in to meet with you. So the temple needs to be prepared. Cleanliness. It needs to smell nice. It needs to be dusted. It needs to not be gross. Like, these are the things that have to be done. So those are the kinds of things that you work for, you build towards. It's not you're just going to light a candle and evoke the deity, right? No, like there is a process to that to make it stabilized. Living evocations, yes, you can actually summon the soul out of somebody else and put it into work for you. Right? Like you can, a big portion of what I've done for clients is when they're sleeping, I'll bring their spiritual body up out of their body, put it in my ritual work, and bond them and the spell that I'm creating to them directly with each other so that there is no separation between the energy and the forces and the behaviors and the outcome. So that they are compressed, that it becomes a new spirit. There is no extra intelligence that they gain. It's just extra energy that's being pulled into them directly, so that way their behavior exists as it needs to in the function of what's going to be evoked. Now, the good thing is with this book is that it gives you a foundation. It goes through the different elements of working with the elemental forces. It's like you sit on a windy hill and you let the wind blow through you, so you understand how to feel that lighter energy. So when you're connecting to the energies of the elements, that's one way that you breathe in the element of the air, you exhale the element of air. You sit before on a rainy day and let the rain fall over you. You know, you learn the cold, you learn those elements, you learn the nature of that thing that you're doing as you're in that space doing it. You sit before a candle flame or a bonfire and you feel the heat, you feel the changes, you feel the transformation. On a day where it's either, dry dirt or muddy dirt or whatever, you learn the different types of dirt so that you learn the different types of energies. So you learn how to evoke that type of feeling, that type of change in your ritual process, so that way you carry it through you and into your work in a better way. So that way you know that when you conjure up the earth, you know what it feels like, you know what its behavior is going to be, you know how it'll respond accordingly. So when you go to call upon the salamanders, the undines, or the gnomes, or the sylphs, whatever the force, the powers are within those forces, the intelligence is behind them, right? If you're using the animalistic nature, if you're using the divine nature of it, right? So those are the different grades of intelligences between bestial life, infernal life, divine life, angelic life. It's all how they apply to the nature of the thing. So one thing has several natures within it. Separating out the nature that you want and working directly on that thing is what the terminology is for. So it's not that I'm going to conjure out the infernal aspect of the spirit of mugwort to cause terrible hallucinations for the next person that smokes it. It's that I'm going to use the raw emotional state that mugwort can bring out, and I'm going to face it down when I'm using it to bring a spirit of darkness into alignment, so that way it does not corrupt what I'm doing. So that if I am working on an environment of harsh reality and I need something to be a force of change, then I need to bring out that thing of change within the spirit of the dead matter of the plant and call on its spirit and bring out its nature. So as it transforms from being solid matter into smoke, in that transition period, the smoke behaves in a way, the elements and the vibrations behave in a way that is in alignment and congruency with the work that I'm doing. So that way, by serving it and by being able to be served by those energies, it becomes a stable force of spellcraft, so that there's no corruption to the spell. There's none of this, oh, I have to worry about what other ingredients I'm using, or I have to worry about wandering spirits. It's no. You put those in there. You built them specifically to do a job. They do the job. Job done. So it's, you bless the thing, you cultivate the thing, you curate the thing. But when you set up your evocations, the fundamental thing that you're doing is you're setting an environment in which a spirit or a behavior of energy can exist properly. So does that mean you have to go out and get a bowl of dirt that's from the hill that you want to work with? Yeah, it does. Why? Because you're bringing it into that space. You're going to apply your spell to that thing. So you need an intermediary. You need the foundation of the environment. What is the water like? What is the earth like? What is the air like? What is the behavior of those things in relation to each other? So that way when you're doing something that brings in energy outside of what it is, you have an element that's able to be recreated within that space. So by setting up your space accordingly, you've created the right conditions for that manifestation to occur. So if you're going to be like building out a spell totem, building out an array device, in that moment, when you put the animal product, the herbal product, the stones, the metals, all of it together creates density. It creates that next step of evolution in your process, so that way as you go through and you develop what is an evocation, what is a spirit going to be in relation to what I'm trying to do, you can condition the environment, you can condition the nature of the spirit itself, so that way you form the body that will give it the best results in your work. You give it elements of itself that it otherwise lacks when it's all in separation, right? This is why creating an herbal formulary of the spirit that you're conjuring is super important, because you can use the herbs of the different elements that are associated to the planetary natures of its behavior. So that way you know if it's one of the kings, or if you know if it's one of the princes, or if it's one of the dukes, or one of the lords, or one of the, all of the different things. You know what those represent as far as which planet those are associated with, or what element they're associated with within that planet. So you have a very specific framework of what is these things. And what's interesting is if you take away from the demonic aspect and you go through the history books and you figure out who was the Lord of France in one region, you can use that as a name to summon up the behavior that was associated with it. So if you want someone to behave better and you want to be able to do that, you use a living evocation. You conjure up, well, that one's actually the dead, that's the necromantic invocations, right? You summon the spirit up out of the memory of the hive mind of the earth, so that way when you're creating from it, you have a means to create something like what you want that has already been in some way, shape, or form. So you're recalling to itself the nature that you want to engage with. You're evoking the memories, you're evoking the spirit, you're bringing it back to a form that may not be the body that it had, it may not be in the time that it had, but because of your ritual array and the setup that you're doing, you've created the ingredients necessary to be able to bring those energies free from their form into what it is you're working on. So you can create those evocations successfully. So that's how that works. I'll get into more depth on that in a little bit, but evocations are a lot of fun. So